Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Have a touch, please. All quiet, please. Thank you. Go ahead, take your notes out. We're going to be doing some more notes in here today. Yes, we're going to be looking at England and the Protestant Reformation there. It's going to get really, really dramatic. Yes? Did you just put your hand up?
Yes.
Yes? Did you want me to call on you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, go for it.
Do you have the quiz today?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you got the quiz today. Yes, you have the quiz today. It's like, yes. And then we'll do notes after that. Yes. Uh-huh. Just color it in. Yeah, I mean, this one's kind of boring. They just did one color for, it's like, didn't even try. That's an effort, you know. Hello. That's, yeah, that works too, and so forth. Yeah, so just color them in. So good. Reminder, this is bring it in. Any of you guys have it ready now? Yep. Bring it in. You don't get extra credit unless you do it. You give it a try. Okay? So we'll get to the English. That's why I put the quiz up there first, right? So that I would be reminded as well. Good grief. Any of you guys have any idea who you think is going to win? It's getting closer. How many guys think that Trump is going to pull out a victory? Got one hand. How many guys think that Biden is going to pull out a victory? You think Kanye West is going to pull out a victory? There you go. Yes. I have a feeling he might come in third in Idaho, although maybe not. I don't know. Libertarian candidate might do well there as well. Okay, so this is the first quiz and so forth that we've got going on here. And you have got some things ready that you've been looking at. Oh my gosh, this is good. So very good to have that because I think I may have mentioned to you before, the way to retake the test or quiz isn't to come in here. It's going to be basically to hand me the materials that you did. A couple of sentences or so forth on each of the different topics. And you can turn that in, you know, later and so forth. You've been studying it now, right? You guys ready for it? How many guys are like, did we have a quiz today? Ruh-roh. That's not very good. So we'll find out how that goes for you, okay? By the way, the quiz is going to go on to next quarter grades. Next week, Friday, is parent-teacher conferences. Parents and teachers are setting up Zoom conferences, focusing in on students and classes where you're getting a D or below. So I know sometimes in the past, like when we have parent-teacher conferences in the cafeteria, I'd end up talking to a lot of parents whose kids were actually doing quite well in the classes. They're trying to kind of like really focus in on the ones that need greater attention, and so all these Zoom meetings are going to be set up. That's going to be going on Friday. So there's not going to be anything in particular going on there. So actually, when you guys come in, what, Tuesday and Thursday of next week? And then the week after that, it's Tuesday and Thursday as well, okay, physically in the building. And then the week after that, 3 days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then Thanksgiving week. And then after Thanksgiving, we come back for 3 weeks, and then Christmas. And so we're gone for 2 weeks, and then something like 3 weeks or whatever will be the last weeks of this semester. So that's all coming up. Let me tell you how things are going to work for the quiz. You guys ready for the quiz? Okay. All right. Go ahead and clear everything except for something to write with. A pencil or a pen is fine, just not a red pen. Okay. I will actually be giving you 2 pieces of paper. On each of these pieces of paper, there's a place for your name. What will you write in the place for your name? Your name, exactly. You write them on both. You're going to be the only one that's actually going to be writing on these pieces of paper. The one is the score sheet, and so that's where you're going to be writing down your answers. Although you can write down answers and stuff and so forth on the actual quiz itself. You know, sometimes people will draw lines this way and that way. In the matching section, that helps. On the true-false, here's a story. I don't want to completely freak you out or anything. There's 10 true-false, right? it'll either be 5 true and 5 false, or maybe something close to that, 6 true and 4 false, or 6 false and 4 true, whatever it was. But nothing too skewed, so if you find like you're writing down all true, you probably got half of them wrong. Okay? So just know that. Sometimes students like to kind of keep that in mind as they're going through, and so they're like, oh, well, I'm not really sure about this one, and I've done more true than false, so I'll just throw it in on that side. Okay? All right? Now, it just so happens that sometimes it might be 3 true in a row, or 3 trues in a row, or 4 in a row, or whatever, but overall it balances out. Here's another little thing that actually works out pretty well. Cheating is bad, right? It's really hard for you guys to look at anything now that the desks are all spread out. But I do have something that helps kind of calm the nerves a bit, and that is what I call the class floor. If you do an honest effort on this, you cannot get below a 40%. Now, 40% is not very good. I mean, that's failing. I mean, below 60% is failing. But I don't want to have a student do so bad on some exercise, some test or quiz, that they can't recover from that during the course of the semester. So I have what is called the class floor. Hopefully, if you've been studying well enough, that's there to save you. If you haven't studied or you weren't aware of the quiz, so you've read the book though, right? Yes, okay, so. Yeah, you just didn't know it was going to be today. And I had almost forgot it too. Thanks, Mary. Yeah, because, I mean, yeah. So, 40%. Okay? Because that's, do you want to hear the story behind that? Okay, we got one nod head. I went to the college. You don't want to hear it? You do. You don't want to hear it? You do. Okay, I went to the College of William and Mary. I majored in history, government. I had to take a math class. I was like, oh my gosh, I did calculus in high school, and I was like, I can't remember that stuff real well. So I did a class on probability. And the professor had a huge, huge number of students in class, and he would give these tests, and it was all multiple choice. There would be like 5 questions, and each question had 4 possible answers. And he gave, let me see, so they were all 5-question tests, 4 possible answers. Each question would be worth 20 points if you got it right. Do the math. If you get 5 questions right and they're each worth 20, how many points is that? Thank you very much. Okay, 100. But he also had something where he's like, I want to make it so that if somebody guesses and they get it wrong, it's -4. Some tests are set up that way. That's kind of weird. It's like, for me, if you get it wrong, you just don't get the points. You know, you're not going to take points away from your whatever your accumulated score is. So like, okay, here we go. Let's say you got 4 right, and you got 1 wrong. What's the score there? 4 times 20 equals -4 points. So you would lose 4 points if you got 1 wrong. So what's the score there? 76. So instead of like getting, 80%, you get 76%. What's the 76% as far as letter grade? C, yeah. So in any event, I did pretty well, except for this one test. I'm like, oh my gosh, I missed a concept or got it confused, and that led to me getting 4 out of the 5 questions wrong. So what did I get on that test? Do the math. How many points did I get for the one I got right? 20. And then for the ones I got wrong? -4, -4, -4, -4. What did I get on that test? A 4. A 4 out of 100. Oh my gosh, I flunked that test bad. I mean, I suppose I could have gotten it worse. I could have gotten a -20 or something by getting them all wrong. So I thought, that's not very good because, like, what's the average? Let's see, I had an A. So let's say I had two tests. An A, 100%, right? And I had some. An A and an F. What's the average of an A and an F? C, yeah, you'd think so. What's the average between a 4 and 100? You guys know how to do averages? You add them together, divide by 2. What's 104 divided by 2? 52. Yeah, what's a 52? It's an F. So I went in and talked to him, and I said, because I was advocating for myself, I'm like, this doesn't really fair, because I made that argument is like an A and an F, and I did so bad, I mean, like I can hardly recover from it. And he's like, no, didn't change it. I mean, by the end of the semester, I think I was able to get enough hundreds and so forth to end up with a B, But man, that was hard coming back from that. I didn't know I was going to be a teacher at the time, but when I did become a teacher, I basically came up with a policy of not having it so that some student could do so badly that they couldn't recover. So that's why I have the class floor. It's 40%, and it's there, okay? So just know that. It's kind of a calming thing, so if you don't really do bad. In fact, I had some juniors taking a test today, and some were going, well, at least there's 40%. At least they got that. Yeah, so, right? Another thing is going to be absolutely quiet throughout the quiz, okay? After the quiz, what you'll do is you'll take both of the sheets of paper, turn it face down, okay? And I'll come around and collect that. And then afterwards, if you want, it's going to remain absolutely quiet until the last person's finished. You can take out your phone, you can do whatever, you can, take a nap. Yeah, at that point. Questions? Okay, all right, let's go ahead and get this passed out. This is the score sheet, so this is where your answers will be written. Obviously, you're going to write your name on there too. And I think I'm going to, I think I'll wait until the rest of them come back, and then we'll set up times for those guys to take the quiz, because they'll be back in about a week or so, I think. Won't they? I believe. Yeah, November something. November the 10th. So let's see, so we'll see you guys. Oh, so yeah, just a couple more. Not the next time, and the next time, but the time after that. Okay. All right. Here we go. All quiet. The quiz has begun. Best of success to you all. And may the odds be ever in your favor. Suppose I could pause it. I'm just going to let it play. Students watching this can just fast forward. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, for being quiet throughout the quiz. Go ahead and get your notes ready. We will continue on with that. I think last we left off, we'd been talking about predestination, free will, John Calvin, the Protestant work ethic. And I wanted to turn our attention now, you can give this sort of the heading of England, the Reformation in England. All right, you guys know where England is, right? Do you know where England is? What language do they speak? They speak English, yes. And they're on the island of Britain, or in the British Isles. Take a look over here. We've got Great Britain, the larger of the two, and then we've got Ireland. And so they're right off here, off the coast of Norway. There's the English Channel that runs just in between. It's not very big, but it's actually very important. Because if you're England, and you've got a good navy to protect you, all the stuff going on in Europe over history is not going to bother you so much. In fact, it's a very important fact. Different countries get invaded at different times. England has not been successfully invaded since 1066. That's a fact. 1066. That was a long time ago. England not invaded. Now, on the island of Britain, raise your hand if you can tell me. Maybe you know, maybe you don't. It's okay. England is the biggest part of it, and it has most of the people, and they speak English. What is that area in the northern part of that island? Do any of you know? Starts with an S. Scotland. You can write that down. Scotland is just up to the north of England. If you were to go there today on the island of Britain, Scotland is like about a third, the northern third, although it has, as far as its population, maybe only 10% of all of that population on the island. And just for information, on the western part of Britain, there's an area called Wales. It's not whales, as in like a sea creature, but Wales, W-A-L-E-S. And that was an area that had been conquered by the English previously. And so, like, if you're ever like the monarch, let's say the king or the queen of England today, right, Elizabeth II, the person who's next up to take her place is referred to as the Prince of Wales. They don't rule over Wales or anything. That's just the title that they have. So we'll get into some of that as we go through. But write this down first. You ready? England was Catholic. Before the Protestant Reformation, England was Catholic. Okay? So since we've been talking about the various different religious identities, Catholic being the main one in Western Europe as far as Christianity is concerned. And then we saw, I don't know, what was, Marin, who was the first Protestant that started shaking things up and saying, okay, we're leaving? Martin Luther, exactly. Who was the next one we talked about? John Calvin, yeah. Okay. And John Calvin was, where was he in operation? Any of you guys remember that one? It's a mountainous region in Central Europe where they like to eat cheese that has holes in it. Switzerland, yes, okay. So this is all going on. And Martin Luther, where was Martin Luther involved? German areas, yeah. And I always hesitate to call it Germany at this time period because it's not an official country like it is today, the official country of Germany. Back in those days, there were lots of German-speaking areas and so forth. So, in any event, but yeah, right, German. Okay? So, across the water is England. Now, let's just identify some other very important places. What would be that large, important country in the southwest part of Europe that speaks Spanish? Very good. And Spain had a royal family that was tied into the royal family of Austria, which is sort of in the southern German-speaking area, not too far from Switzerland. And they were involved in a lot of different areas. So keep that in mind. You got different royal families, you got different sort of things going on and so forth. That's all going to be important backdrop to the question of what's going to happen in England. All right, you ready? Last time, I think we just barely got into it. We were talking about Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. Okay? Henry VII and Elizabeth of York. They got married, and they helped to end what had been a long period of war in England called the War of the Roses. They called it the War of the Roses because it was primarily between two families that were like tied in that whole royal family thing, but there was a fight as to who got to be the king, etc. And so if there's a fight as to who gets to be the king, they're fighting with each other. You have the one family, the Red Rose, the Lancaster family. And then you had the White Rose, the York family, and they're like fighting and fighting and fighting. Well, as it turns out, Henry VII, who was going to be the leader of the Lancaster family ultimately, Red Rose, Elizabeth of York, White Rose, how's that going to work for you? They solved it. Write it down. When those two became king and queen, the war was over, and everyone in England hoped that the war would never come back again. That there wouldn't be another war over who gets to be the next monarch. Do you understand that? I don't know. Let me just ask you. How many of you guys are the oldest member of your family as far as like siblings? How many of you guys are like younger? You have older siblings. All of you guys have older siblings. You have an older sibling. Yeah, I mean, he was sitting in the class. All of you have older siblings. So let me ask you this. Raise your hand if you think it's fair that the oldest sibling gets everything and the younger siblings get nothing except for table scraps. How many of you guys think that's fair? You don't think that's fair? Well, it seems like it's a pretty good system. You know, it's like if the king has 5 children, who should be the next monarch after the king is gone? But do you think they should like do a drawing or something? You think so? You think that would be fair? You know, every kid has an equal chance? How many of you guys think that would be fair? You think that would be fair? How would we know ahead of time? One of the things, you can write this down, one of the things they wanted in England was they wanted, like, let me see, I'm trying to look for the right word. Predictability. They wanted stability and predictability. They wanted there not to be a fight among cousins or brothers or whatever over who got to be the next monarch. They wanted stability. They didn't want another big war. Do you understand that? If you understand that, you're going to see how things are going to play out in England, because it's going to get pretty crazy. Okay? And it's going to get crazy when it comes to religion. But suffice it to say, at this time, everything looked good. Henry VII and Elizabeth of York, they're Catholic. There's no Protestant Reformation when they get married. There's no Protestant Reformation. They're all Catholic. And they're going to have kids. And you know what? They had 2 boys. Write it down. They had 2 boys. Sometimes when you have 2 boys, it's like, who's going to be the next monarch? Who's going to be the heir? The oldest. Write it down. The oldest. Oldest. But what if something happens to the oldest? Then who gets it? The next one, yeah. So think of it as, you ready? An heir and a spare. An heir and a spare. By the way, does it make any difference what gender it is? Raise your hand if you think that it should go to a boy. The monarchy should go to a boy. No hands. It should go to a girl. It should not go to a girl. I guess that's another way of saying it should go to a boy. Because it should just go, it doesn't matter, boy or girl, whatever. Gosh, you're so modern. Write this down. They didn't think girls could do much of anything back in those days. Did you get that? Have you picked up on that in studying history? Have you looked at this and you're like, all these guys. Did women do nothing? Ah, no, women did lots of things. Were they given opportunities to do lots of things that were in the field that men were operating in? Not too often. And ruling, write that down. They're like, women can't rule. Why can't women rule? Let's figure, why can't women rule? Arguably, why do you think some people thought women couldn't rule? Go for it. women have to raise the children and so forth. Okay, that's one thing, but what about it? Men can raise the children. Why would some people say that just women can't handle the job of being the monarch? Not as strong, you get that? What is that? Who has generally more muscular strength? And this is actually not something to be argued with. Who generally has more muscular strength between males and females? Males, yeah, this is a biological thing. Who is more capable of leading a group? Now that's an interesting question. Who is more capable of running a country? Just because you got muscles, does that mean you can lead a country? Now I suppose if you are literally going to be leading your army into battle, who would be better at that job? Who do you think would be better at that job? A female or a male? The guy's got muscles. He can get in and wield a sword and fight a battle. Although Joan of Arc from France, she did a pretty good job there too. That's an interesting thing. But can you still be a great leader even if you're not like the most physically powerful person in your army? You're like, uh-huh. Like what are some attributes of great leadership? What's that? Loyalty. Okay. What do you need to do to win a battle? Fight? Do you have to just fight or do you have to fight smart? Can you tell me, would it ever make sense in a battle to retreat? Yeah, remember Genghis Khan did that? Remember we talked about how Genghis Khan did that? He would fake out his opponents, pretend he was actually retreating. They would come after his forces and fall into a trap because he would surround them. This is going to be important. You've got that written down? Back in those days, they felt like women couldn't really rule. Keep that in mind because it's going to influence how things will play out. But I'll tell you what, there will be proof for some people that women can't rule. There's going to be a woman ruler in England. And people are going to go, see what I said? Oh my gosh, she just can't do the job. She's terrible. And yet there will also be an example of a woman who proves it wrong, who proves that women can be very successful at ruling a country. In that same life, from the same family. Let's get to it. Henry VII and Elizabeth had 2 boys. Ready? Arthur is the oldest. There we go. Arthur. A-R-T-H-U-R. Arthur is the oldest. And then he had a younger brother named Henry. Who cares? What difference does that make? Arthur is the one who's set to become the next king. Right? And of course, the king and queen are like, we want to make sure that Arthur is like married to, they're not just going to go, oh, go find yourself a nice girlfriend. No, they don't do that back in those days. They make an arranged marriage. Write this down. The arranged marriage was with a princess named Catherine. She was actually a bit older than him. But, whatever. She was, are you ready? From probably the most important royal family in all of Europe. She was from the royal family known as the Habsburgs. The Habsburgs were a royal family, and they were in charge of, as I mentioned, Spain and Austria. They also were in charge of the Netherlands, like where the Dutch were from. And so she was one of the princesses from that family, right? She was like the daughter of the king of Spain. And so they made this arranged marriage. Very smart. It's like, hey, we're going to have the prince of England in England, and then he'll be the king, and his wife will be related to like a very important royal family. It's going to be great, right? It's going to work out awesome. So guess what happened? He died. Write it down. Arthur died. He died very young. He died, I want to say, let's see if I got that written down. I'm not even sure if he was like your guys' age at that point. He was, let's see, okay. He was 15. Within 5 months, he was dead. Got it? Within 5 months, he was dead. So what does that mean? He didn't have any kids. He didn't have any kids. In fact, his marriage, without getting into all the details, his marriage was not really like a marriage yet, in the sense that they hadn't really been like husband and wife. And you're like, why are you getting into all those like very personal, intimate details? Because it's actually a very important point relative to their marriage and what's going to be coming up next. They got married. He was sickly. He died within 5 months. So, who's the king? Well, we know who the king is. We know the king is Henry VII. Well, who's going to be the next king then? If the heir dies, who's going to be the next one then? Exactly, the other Henry, okay? And he will become ultimately, the world famous, the most famous, Henry VIII. Let's see if we got Henry VIII. There we go. Arthur, Catherine, and Henry. Arthur is dead, okay? Sorry, now Henry, who's 5 years younger than his brother, now he's the next in line. And his parents go back to the same question of like, well, we had that great marriage put together between Arthur and Catherine from the Habsburgs, and now we got to figure out what to do with Henry. So they've got this daughter-in-law, and then they've got this son who's going to become the next king, and they're like, I don't know, what are we going to do? Anybody got any broad ideas? How about this? Write that down. That's an interesting idea. Henry, who will become Henry VIII, his parents say, well, she's your sister-in-law, but you know what? We're going to make it so that she's your wife instead. Because that was such an important arranged marriage, we want to make sure that that arrangement doesn't go away. We just want to keep that thing going. So we'll just replace you with the other person. You got that? Now, does that look a little odd? Does that look really odd? Now, here's an important thing to understand this. You ready? It went against the rules of the church. Write that down. It went against the rules of the church. The church would look to the Bible, and the Bible says things in there basically like, you're not supposed to marry your sister-in-law. That's just not what you do. Because if she's your sister-in-law, then she's like your sister, and you're not supposed to marry your sister. So this is like, you can't do that. You can't do that. So who's in charge of issues like marriage? The church. Write that down. The church is in charge of issues related to marriage. Because marriage, in those days certainly, was a religious relationship. Can you get married today in a religious institution, a church? Yes. Can you get married and not in a religious institution? Yeah, and go in front of a judge. Either one, you have to have a piece of paper, and it's got to be signed and so forth, and you turn it in. Back in those days, through the church. The church is in charge of marriages. The church says who can get married, the church says who can't get married. And it looks on the face of it that these two cannot get married. And yet, Henry VII and his wife, the Queen, persist. Who, if anyone, within the Catholic Church at that time could say, yeah, these guys could get married? Who could do it? Who could say, it's okay? Who is the head of the Catholic Church that makes the final decisions on all things related to the Catholic Christian religion? Pope, exactly. Write this down. Henry VII sent word, and Catherine's family did too. They sent word to the Pope. They basically said, look, this previous marriage, it needs to be like gone. It needs to be like it never happened. It needs to be, I think I spelled that right, annulled. They need to get an annulment. As in, the Pope says, I say the wedding, the marriage never happened. Can the Pope say that? Sure, the Pope can say that. And actually, there's a fairly reasonable argument that was made to the Pope as to why these two should be considered never to have been married. They both said, I do, but did they? As far as the intimate relations, as far as husband and wife? No. You're like, what difference does that make? Back in those days, it was quite clear. If you didn't have your wedding night, you weren't really married. You got that? And so the reality is sometimes you would have these couples getting married off really young just because the parents are like, well, we made a deal and we just want to make sure that thing is done. And they're like, very young, and they're like, they're not old enough to like have that wedding night, that intimate relationship with each other. They're like, whatever, they'll have it eventually and yada, yada, yada. Well, if they never have it, like in this situation, then the argument is that the marriage never took place. And if the marriage never took place, then the Pope could say it's annulled. You got that? The Pope said it's annulled. And so Henry was able to marry what appeared to be his sister-in-law, Catherine. And nobody thought the worse of it. That's just how it is. Got it? So there we go. Henry VIII and Catherine. And the Pope's happy, and Henry VIII's family's happy, and Catherine's family's happy. Everyone's happy. What could possibly go wrong? They had a child. A girl named Mary. And they didn't have any more kids. And they got older and older, and after a while, it looked like Catherine was not ever going to have any more kids. And who was going to be the next monarch of England after Henry VIII died? A girl. And was that going to be okay? Not according to Henry VIII. Next time, we'll talk about what Henry VIII did to get rid of, his wife and marry a second wife, Anne Boleyn. We'll get into those details. You know how many wives he ultimately ended up having? 6. Yeah, the wives of Henry VIII. Six wives. Anyway, so we'll come back and we'll pick up right there with the issue of how to say goodbye to your first wife. Anyway, we'll unsort all that next time. Okay, you guys have a good one.